Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 10 of the CMA Panel Americas Edition. Today, we're going to be talking about the SPM module, and we have Josh Sutton from ServiceNow, who's a fellow CMA. So, welcome to the podcast, Josh. Thank you for taking some time with us.
Yeah, appreciate being here. I have a serious passion for the world of SPM and all the things considered in there. So I'm just excited to share that with all of our viewers, and also to do my second CMA podcast since becoming a
Yes,
CMA in January.
that's right. Yes, and congratulations again. Welcome to it. We're very happy to have you a part of it. Let me just get the stream. There we go. Okay, so why don't you go ahead and just to introduce yourselves, because we may have some new viewers that didn't see you in the previous episodes.
Sure. So I work with an organization within ServiceNow called Product Excellence, and we were formerly called Product Success. We, as everything does, we evolve, and we really are tied to the individual BUs or business units within ServiceNow, the product teams, the engineering teams, so on and so forth, to hear from our customers, hear from our partners, hear from our internal delivery folks, what challenges they're having, how can we help enable them better, but also provide guidance, advisory, architectural, and strategy. So all the things that I love doing, and I get to focus in the area that is now newly coined portfolio management, which includes SPM and all the things under there, enterprise architecture, and collaborative work management.
Oh, that's excellent. And like you said, you became a CMA this year, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yes. Oh,
Lifelong
that's
journey.
awesome.
Started my ServiceNow that journey in 2014 as a customer, and then I moved to
Mhm.
partners, and then 3 years ago came to ServiceNow.
Directly. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so let's dive in a bit. So those of us that are on the live stream, feel free to post a question in the chat. I'll moderate and make sure that Josh can answer them as well, and we'll acknowledge anybody that wants to say hello. And thank you all for joining us live. But let's kind of dive into a bit of the start of SPM. So it didn't have that title always, right? It started as project management, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah,
like PPM, project portfolio
PPM.
management,
Yes, that's
and
right.
that was
Yes.
actually back when I first implemented on Eureka. It was kind of a newer concept, and then Fuji and releases after that, it began to evolve, and then eventually took the nomenclature of IT business management, and so lived with that for quite some time. And during that time period, it was always considered, well, we don't want to prevent like enterprise portfolio offices and the ones that aren't necessarily IT, because it just gives it that title, or you kind of go, oh, this is for IT, why would I use it, right? So
Mhm.
a few years ago it changed to strategic portfolio management, because that's truly what it always was. It was always about driving the strategies to delivery and execution within your organization. So yeah, I've seen pretty much all the iterations in my time with ServiceNow, and it's been great, especially in the last couple of years, how new and evolving everything has come. I can't tell you how excited I am about the new things that are going to be coming that people don't even know about yet. So
And that's fair. We always live under the safe harbor agreement. I'm not sure how deep we'll get into the what's coming in the future. If we have time, we'll get to it. So, Josh, I've wanted to ask you for a bit here. For those considering purchasing SPM, what are some of the most valuable areas of the SPM product that you feel exist and will help customers get that outcome that they're looking for?
I think really it's about consolidating your work efforts to a single area, just kind of like everything else within ServiceNow.
Mhm.
But when it comes to the SPM suite of products, it's really transparency of your work items. Whether it's demand intake, I don't know. I'm keeping a spreadsheet, and yeah, even if I go into demand, well, I'm just now keeping a log of records of demands. But you need to elevate that a little bit more. I'm now taking, and I'll allude this to kind of ServiceNow governance, just to give it a kind of backstory, but think about portfolio governance. Not only am I deciding what I'm going to be putting into the next iterations and things like that for all of the products that I'm deploying or enhancing, but I need to align those to the strategic vision, right? Well, that's exactly what SPM is meant for. Collect all the execution, but then pair it out to that strategy layer, align it to your goals, have a quick filter and prioritization method. And with a lot of the new products and features within the last couple of years, it's really kind of elevated that. So people think that they have to start with demand. Well, not necessarily. If you just need a place to manage and do repetitive, deployments of your projects, you can start there. So we do have an implementation kind of strategy, but it's really about what's the best for your business at this point in time. I've also been in situations past, career areas where I was implementing, where somebody had a very well-defined, orchestrated project management process, but they had nothing for demand. Well, some people would say, well, let's get you into ServiceNow quickly with project management, but you're already doing that really well. So let's hold on that. Let's get you established with demand management and start giving you that process that we are kind of built into product to start with, and then we'll move you into project, right? So you're actually solving a pain point that you already have, while still operating as normal, and then it's just kind of a more easier shift into project. So that's I would say, all in all, it's about aligning all of your work
Mhm.
with your teams, creating that transparency, and being able to associate with your strategies, your goals, the targets for quick prioritization, quick filtering, and leadership decisions and things like that.
I definitely agree that accelerated decision making drives accelerated outcomes, and then therefore you can start that value meter calculation much earlier. It's the old adage of if it doesn't exist in prod, can I get value from it? And the answer to that is usually a no. Of course, you have sub prod instances and sub prod products that you might be executing and managing, but we need to really make sure that we're delivering things to the business that they can then utilize to drive those outcomes and make their lives better. So, okay,
I love
what
that.
about those people who have recently implemented SPM? Where would you recommend they go to see some quick wins? I know everyone's looking for quick wins, and I'm usually against that because I'd rather a big long-term win over
Right.
5 years than I would a small short-term win in 3 months. But let's start with the quick wins.
I think kind of sticking with that same strategy, we'll stick on the execution side for the first bit. Repeatability, right? So one of the things that I'm very surprised, I guess, when I talk to our customers that are leveraging, project management, for example, is the lack of use of project templates. And the reason I say that is, well, if you have a standard process and we're building out our work breakdown structures, or our
Mhm.
roadmap, if you will, of the project, and I'm doing these things over and over again, and I'm constantly going in and creating all the project tasks and assigning the resources and all of those things, um, your quickest win is, let's make it repeatable. And there's a lot of content that is out there. My team is creating it. Our inbound or our outbound product teams are creating it for taking what is in platform and giving ideas on how to kind of make that better. One example is, I had a recent customer who has not only repeatable projects, but the people, or the types of people that are assigned for those projects, they're very repeatable. As in, I can build out 50 and it's going to be the same duration for the same and same effort for these types of roles or groups that I need. So we created a community article that's out there in our SPM Hub of associating resource assignments to those project templates. So now, not only generating these work breakdown and the plan quicker and more repeatably. But I'm also assigning those resources where I need them, not necessarily the named people, but the attributes of those people, like the roles or the groups. So I'd say that's probably your quickest win from a project management standpoint. And I'm
Yeah,
happy to elaborate
definitely.
on some other areas if you'd like me to. But
Yeah, so the templates kind of sent me down this path of I see some customers hesitant to go in and create, like you said, a new project. Do I want to do it for everything? And then they'll kind of have this effort level in the project. They'll have to meet this threshold before they decide to then create it. If you can lower that, which it sounds like with your templates, you would be doing that, then people will be able to create more templates for more, or use templates to create more projects in a faster method. Think monthly patching. You
oh
could
yeah.
spin up a project that's repeatable like that to track everything that you can get out of the project data that you can't get from, say, a service catalog item or just a CMDB task or something along those lines. So that's a really great idea for some of the quick wins. Did you want to dive deeper into that? We do have time.
Well, just to kind of speak, and I would say I've got the shirt on. Collaborative work management is also some area that you can do some quick wins of those repeatable things, right? So building a template of a board where it has all the tasks. So it's not necessarily needs to be a big full-on project, but within collaborative work management, I can create repeatable, what we call boards, CWM boards, that have
Mhm.
all those steps that I need to do. And within my team, say it's a ServiceNow team or it's a different area, I've got a security team that they go into different buildings and they have the same vendors that they use with the same types of things. And so it's spawning that repeatability very quickly. Again, now we don't need project managers to, even with the project templates, if I'm not familiar with being a project manager per se, I can
Mhm.
run an engagement or a project because I have the built out steps, right? And now I'm
Right.
getting quicker time to delivery as well because I don't have to spend time learning how to be a project manager, if you will.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. I did see a comment. It looks like it got, oh, yeah, looking forward to CWN in Zurich. Is that when that's coming out?
So
Proposed?
CWM's a product within the portfolio management business unit.
Sure.
Um, it's been out for a few releases.
Okay.
However, just yesterday, we have our quarterly releases. So all of SPM products, with the exception of a couple that aren't in the next UI yet, they're all on
Hmm.
store apps or scoped apps. And rather than waiting for a family release twice a year, they're actually doing quarterly releases. And yesterday was
Nice.
our quarterly release. And CWM has a ton of new capabilities and features with it. It's actually the direction of Agile Dev, if everybody's familiar with that,
Oh,
is
okay.
moving into CWM. And this is the first iteration of that in its MVP form. So not
Oh,
fully baked out yet, but it's definitely there.
is there a transition plan that's coming for those that are already on
We
Agile?
are actually working on that. Yeah.
Okay.
And quite frankly, just being out on the SPM Hub, I'm going to target the community a lot in
Go
this
ahead. Yeah.
conversation because we have a vault of knowledge there. Our Delta decks are for the quarterly releases are posted after every release, usually
Mhm.
within about a week or so. That may change in the future. I mean, we'll take safe harbor on that as well. But right
Yes.
now, it is within a few days to a week that we have the Delta deck, so you can see everything that has been released, and you don't have to wait for the family release on the doc sites.
Got it. Okay, so we covered some of the quick wins.
Mhm.
Let's talk about some of the longer term, higher value wins for a recently implemented SPM product. How do they prepare? How would a customer prepare for that today? And then when can they start to see some returns on that investment?
I think the biggest thing is just having a plan that involves leadership and above, right? Because if you're doing it in a silo, and this kind of is a blanket statement to anything being enabled within ServiceNow, if you're doing it in a silo, where's the exposure? Where's the drive to get people to not have to do it? Like you're not beating them with a
Hmm.
stick, but to adopt it because we know and it's been communicated appropriately, this is the direction that our business is going as well, right?
Right.
So um, many use cases in my implementation is starting small with that pilot group, or we want to take advantage of it and then ripple effect out, right?
Mhm.
That's the kind of one of the unique areas of the like business operations with SPM is things with software asset management or um, HR. It's for an area of the business and it's to
Right.
do their job and their operations. Well, SPM spans across the entire organization. So almost like you're re-implementing in a light fashion every time you onboard a new area of the business.
Mhm.
And so to help with that, I'm working very closely with the product team on this as well. It's called enterprise-wide deployment. And it's taking, what I think the concept of, if anybody's familiar with the team spaces, um, it's more rigid than what
Mhm.
enterprise-wide deployment is going to be. But thinking about for expansion across the organization, how am I going to communicate this? How can I show value that I'm actually getting out of it? So that's kind of the bigger organizational strategy, I would say, is kind of keep that in mind. When it comes to your own team, if I'm starting on, or department or area of your business, if I'm starting with project or I'm starting with demand and project or whatever it is that you're starting with, make sure that you're, I guess, aware of all the capabilities that you now own, right? Um, Make sure you're aware of the new way rather than the old, and that's really comes into the next UI experiences that have been built, all of the strategy areas, the financials is getting an uplift, and all of that. If you're not doing resourcing, right, I would say look at how I can do that. You want to talk about value add very quickly, but with the long term strategy as well. Get resource management going. If I can
Mhm.
see where my people, even if I'm just putting data in there to see, I'm over allocating my individuals. I am
Mhm.
burdening my teams with too much work. Uh, Even if you're not going to do anything with it right now, just getting that data and having that transparent, that is a huge thing. And now you can take that and refine it to help your the resourcing get better. And then
Mhm.
if you're doing more, I'll say repeatable or maybe like projects over time, you're going to get tighter with your estimates. You're going to get better at making sure that your people know this is what to expect. I'm not going to over allocate. I'm also now looking at where I need to supplement with either contractors or new hires, or
Mhm.
guess what? That whole prioritization, we can't do it right now because we don't have the manpower to do it, right?
Right.
So resource management is definitely something of, if you're not doing, look at for that short and longer term as well.
Yeah, visibility is one of the key milestones that I always like to reach first because I can't manage what I don't measure.
Right.
So until I have that visibility into it, and that can unlock a lot of effective decision making. One that really struck a chord with me was, can we do this project? Do we have the resources available? So being able to look and quickly determine I won't have the resources available for 8 months can help then drive strategic governance decisions and may
Yeah.
cascade a shift in the approach across the entire organization. And that's really centered on that visibility piece. So we must have that foundational data in the system so that we can then have the visibility into it and then group it, categorize it, and make some decisions from there. And one other piece that I also like to say is, after the visibility is opened up and we have it, then suddenly we can start to measure all of the repeatable or the common tasks that are automation candidates. And
Yeah.
from the automation candidate pool, we pull demands and then move them into through our demand and implementation processes with a value based approach. Highest value can be delivered. Then we can also use that within our demand process to determine, do we have the resources? So we're now coming full circle, and then decide which ones we're automating and implement those in a way that drives even more accelerated decision making. And suddenly it becomes a continuous feedback loop that self improves. which is just absolutely phenomenal.
I
Okay.
love that.
Well,
Yeah.
I love that too. Okay. So for those who have been in the SPM game for a long time, maybe they've been on it since PPM days. What areas are new to the product that they can start leveraging and they may be unaware of?
Yeah, I'd say first and foremost, it's the next UI stuff. So, if you're still working out of the form view and your lists and everything for, say, project, get onto project workspaces as quickly as you can, right? That is what is being enhanced. That's what's being feature rich with every
Mhm.
release. And with that, resource plans is the legacy, resource assignments and resource management workspace. That's the latest, greatest as well. Again, looking at taking advantage of the things that are actually going to grow features rather than staying stagnant. We're the product teams are really looking at doing it better as well. And then as the platform evolves and more features are provided on the platform, those are going to be implemented with our products as well. So
Mhm.
it's really a get on the latest and get a path to that as quickly
Okay.
as you can, because I say this with all the love, you're going to be left behind, right?
Right.
And we don't want to be there. We want to make sure that we're taking advantage of all the latest and greatest. I think the other thing too to consider is if you're an implementer, make sure that you are going towards the latest and greatest as well. As I stated, I've been around in this space since those PPM days, and it's very easy to do that kind of what I know and implement for your customers. But it could be having a detrimental effect on your customers. So pay attention to the deltas of not only the product deltas, but also the certification renewal deltas, right? It's not there to just renew, it's there to
Right.
educate you on what is coming and what's latest and greatest. Um, I think the other thing is look at collaborative work management if you haven't yet. Look at things like portfolio planning workspace or strategic planning workspace. There's a standard and pro licensing consideration there. But
Okay.
look at those things, and that's what's really about the strategy of it.
Right.
Um, I'm going to target the community hub for SPM again. We have quick start guides that are it's kind of a anchor point for all the information for resource management, for financial planning, for um, strategy and portfolio planning, EAP, which is enterprise agile planning that we haven't even talked about yet.
Oh, okay.
That is a great resource. And then we also have micro learnings and um, we're breaking out some of that new feature into standalone learnings within ServiceNow University, previously known as Now Learning.
Hmm.
So that's definitely what I would say is get up to speed. We're doing webinars all the time as well. Currently, we're doing an intensive partner series. I think it's 12 or 14 parts,
Oh,
where
wow.
it's actually taking our partners through implementing the different products and exposing them to the new and latest and greatest.
Latest and greatest. You said something that really caused me to look back and go, okay, I'm a platform UI person because I'm most comfortable there, and I always struggle to move into workspaces because I know the other things so well.
Yeah.
So how do you recommend I get off the platform UI and get into the SPM workspaces? Because it sounds like there's several.
There are several. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too, of just a quick side note is within SPM, you're going from forms to now multiple workspaces. One of the
Mhm.
big drivers that I know the product teams have been talking about is that kind of more consolidation.
Mhm.
Not necessarily having to have it all in one workspace, but being able to get to the other workspaces quickly if there are multiple, right, at the end of the day. For me, I was in the same boat, Chris. It's easy, especially from a development standpoint. Workspaces can be difficult. It can be a challenge to learn, even though there's learning courses out there on university. around UI builder and the next experience and all of that, it's
Mhm.
still, there's still a little bit of a black box syndrome when I try and get in there. But the good thing about admins is a lot of the stuff to influence the workspaces can actually be done in that forms. So, the business rules and UI things that we're used to because we've been on the platform forever, field changes, list changes, all of that stuff definitely influences the workspaces too. The thing that I found was easiest for me to get into the new world was just to start using them and identify what is missing, if you will. I've got a little bit of an advantage because I identify what's missing and I directly, reach out to the product team and say, "Hey, we're,
Mhm.
lacking parity here." Um,
Yeah.
but it's really using it. Like think of it from a user perspective rather than an admin perspective. But then once you get a little bit more feel for that, I obviously recommend the UI builder courses and stuff like that because it's as much as a challenge as it is to get out of that old. That's what we're all about doing as
Yeah.
implementers, as ServiceNow employees. We are trying to transform businesses, and so let's drink our own Kool-Aid on that message, right?
Definitely. Yeah. So that kind of reminds me of some advice I gave to the current CMA cohort for Americas. So I was in San Diego a couple of weeks ago for their kickoff, and I said that the new presentation style that they're teaching you in this framework is very different from probably anything you've ever done. I'm not sure if it was different for you, but it was very different for me. Basically, it had it flipped, and the longer I delayed working on that and getting good at that new framework, the less value I got out of it and the more struggles I had. So I guess you're absolutely right. I need to invest in myself and start practicing and getting good and just accepting that I'm learning something new and I'm going to have some struggles and frustrations and stick with it. All right, so I will. I drink Kool-Aid is a bit harsh, but I'll drink some champagne to it. So I'll drink my own champagne that
I
way.
like it.
Okay. So what would you say? Oh, actually, we have a couple comments. So Philip Swan, hey, from across the pond. Good to see you. So he's saying that workspace equals identifying the use cases to drive the customer's expectations. That's absolutely correct. And then he said something about hooking in with the COE and product team, which I think Josh already had covered as well. Did you want to expand anything on there, or did you want to move on?
Um, I think that the rate of material that's coming out as well, it's kind of like you're directly talking to either my team or the product teams because we're the ones producing that content, right?
Mhm.
The hope is to scale as much as possible. So in that regard of learning about what functionalities are in the next few experiences and all of that,
Mhm.
I know it's hard. It's hard for me to even go and learn new stuff because everybody doesn't have time, and that's the one
Right.
precious commodity, right? But it's worth it. And
Mhm.
especially since we're trying to get as much out there as we can, take advantage of it, right? Um, I guess that's how I would kind of elaborate on that.
Okay, well, that's great. So, for those that say, I already have MS projects or I have smart sheets. Oh, I think that's the wrong. There we go. Show this one. I already have MS project or smart sheets. Why do I need SPM? What would you say
uh,
to that?
yeah, and there's a lot that I can say to that. Um, when you're thinking about MS Project, Smart Sheets, I would always go back to yes, you're able to manage and track your work, right?
Mhm.
How are you seeing the bigger picture? How are you transparent with your work? Even in project uh, MS Project online, they have more of a I can see more things than just my projects, right? It's not just my installed app and stuff like that. Um,
Mhm.
but how do I know if from a like a resource management perspective, my timeline running long, what is that impacting?
Right.
From a process and kind of driving that repeatable and automations and things, I can't really do that, right? Yes, it's easier. Everything is easier if you're just putting it on a spreadsheet, right? But anybody that's even seen a little bit of the power of it, any part of the platform knows that workflow automation, right? I hate to use buzzwords, but it's reality.
Mhm.
Smart sheets. There is. I was just actually notified of a change coming. Cost is a big thing.
Yeah.
CWM is actually a answer to like the Monday.coms, the smart sheets and stuff like that. I'm not
Mhm.
bashing those products. I think they're fine.
Yeah.
But when I'm looking at bringing more together, that's always the story of ServiceNow. It's not working in silos and individual areas. I'm able to pull things from other areas of the business because they're all on the same platform, right?
Right.
Um, I do have some customers that manage things from a strategic level in SPM, but they're running their actual project execution. Their project managers are using MS Project. That
Yes.
I don't know that that's a bad thing. I wouldn't call it a good thing either. It is what it is.
Mhm.
Bringing that data in at least gets you exposure to that. Just like you talk about the dev teams using Jira and ADO and all of those other
Yeah.
products. As long as we can bring it all together to see that more strategic lens of things, that to me is the most important. And then figure out why I am stuck on these other,
Yeah.
products or applications or whatever.
Mhm.
It's always a conversation that I love to have, and understanding that and then being able to show the value of what they could actually be doing. Now you don't have to bring everything in and then just do the strategy layer. I can actually
Right.
execute in here as well, and it's not as hard as I thought it was going to be.
That's
Enablement.
right. Yeah, I've seen some customers who have multiple vendors, and each vendor has a different tool. And
Sure.
MS Project and Smart Sheets were the two tools for these different vendors, and an integration to them allowed, like you said, that portfolio level visibility, so that the corporate entity could manage all of this stuff at the corporate level, and then still allow the execution underneath the vendors, because they refuse to change and they refuse to build in the instance, and that's their prerogative.
Yeah.
So ServiceNow does have that capability to pull the data in and then allow at least you to strategically make investments and decisions based on it after that.
Got
Okay.
it. Yep.
So if I'm a customer that's on Agile Development 2.0, how can I effectively plan or prepare for SPM?
So I say that that's a interesting question. Agile Dev technically is in the realm of SPM, right? Even though it's like a not to get salesy, but it's a $0 SKU, right? You're just entitled
Mm-hmm.
to it. Um, it I will just this is under safe harbor because I don't know exactly when it's going to be fully. But Agile Dev is moving into collaborative work management.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, with the release yesterday, it's MVP Rev 1. A lot of the things that I know I've not liked about like the unified backlog or triage boards can be different because is actually getting better with this first release of Agile in CWM. There's no like two records and all of that. Um, I would say that from a strategy overall like influence perspective, I guess I kind of equate like the Agile Dev is fantastic because it actually is driving process as well, right?
Yeah.
When you think about Scrum processes and things like that, it really helps to embed that.
Mm-hmm.
But is that all that they're using, right? And are you actually using it as Agile Dev was built from like a Scrum perspective? If it's lighter than a project, if it's lighter than all of that. I think the answer to that is definitely collaborative work management.
Mhm.
But if you need more, that's where like projects and demands and all that, you don't you don't resource agile. I mean, chastise me or whatever. But agile is meant on like capacity of sprint and velocity of those
That's right.
points being completed at sprint, right? Um, if I'm doing work that requires me to resource for the hours and plan and meet competing priorities and things like that, it's just not going to happen if you remain in that kind of agile dev environment. It just
And no budget. You
Right,
can't
right,
budget
exactly,
anything,
no financials
right?
and things like that.
Right.
Getting better
How
with
can
epics, but still epics are that longer term, and then when you get
Yeah.
to the execution, now you're back down to the story level
Mhm.
and things like that, so
When you can't go to the board and get budget with an epic. You need to come with that project plan, the budget, the resource allocations, all of that type of stuff. And then also let them know what your execution plan is tied to. Oh, we have 3 out of the 5 roles we need. We need to go find these people before we can start. Otherwise, we can't start. Or we need them to onboard somebody, say, 3 months into the project. Like you can
right.
get down to that level of granularity so that then those decisions can be made and executed upon at the right time. Okay, that's great. How does SPM connect to CSDM? And this one's near and dear to my heart because I do love my CMDB, CSDM stuff.
Yes, I do too. I mean, that is like, you want to talk about cutting teeth, that's where I lived. I've lived in the ITOM world and things like that as well. So SPM, sort of. EA, or what used to be called APM,
Mm-hmm.
that's really like, I mean, foundation and crawl. Well, foundation is foundational data, but crawl,
Mm-hmm.
that's all the components of your CMDB in CSDM alignment. That's what they leverage. Their business
Right.
applications, application services, all of those things. And then it takes it to, again, you're taking it now to a higher level of, now I can do app rationalization. Now I can do total cost of ownership. Now I can
Mm-hmm.
do, if I have asset management, I can do TRM or TPM, which is the technology portfolio management, or I can see now where end of life for software impacts my business applications and things like that. And um, going back to that whole app rationalization perspective, I'm going to just bubble it up to CMDB or configuration management. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm just collecting things and I'm not doing anything with that, what's the point, right? Yeah, I've got 15,000 CIs in my CMDB. If not managing it and I'm not actually reviewing the things, when you think about business applications, that's where I need to make sure that I don't have 5 business applications that are doing the exact same thing, but they're only there because these teams want to keep that, right?
Right.
You're able to elevate that more to the strategy layer, and then ties in with the SPM to say, now we're decommissioning or we're deploying or there's maintenance that's happening on these business applications. Boom, I've got my projects that are driving that, or my product teams that are driving the development and enhancement of those as well.
Yeah, it really delivers audience specific visibility at the level in which you care about the most. So if I'm C suite, I care about business apps, business capabilities, costs, outcomes, and delivery timelines. If I'm the process owner, I want to get much more granular and look maybe at a business service offering layer and determine, is this performing well and how can I improve that? So one of the things that I really enjoy about SPM and how it relates into CSDM is the hardware refresh and
Oh
how
yeah,
it combines CSDM, hardware asset management or enterprise asset management, and SPM. So that one of the things that's going to change a lot for me now is generating a hardware refresh project template because that's something that happens every 3 years for many
yeah.
organizations. And it is a huge, huge manual effort. And when you combine some of those features in both different products and then connect them through a project, then suddenly you've got execution plus budget plus planning plus visibility. That's really a great combination.
I'm going to hold on that for 1 second,
Sure.
because you talk about hardware refresh, and people say, well, I'm going away of cloud and stuff like that. Well, there's still maintenance to be done there, but
Hmm.
there are still data centers out there, and there are still things that people need to operate on, like laptops and computers and things like that.
Yes.
Guess what? That isn't. That's not just IT. So now, if I'm bringing it in and I have that, you keyed on it, visibility, I
Hmm.
can now pull people in from other areas, and we're still working on a same repeatable kind of process of things,
Right.
with the execution layer being the applications within ServiceNow, right? And I can relate the different areas. You want to talk about MS Project and Smartsheets versus project management within ServiceNow. I'm relating all of the assets that are within my asset inventory. I know what software is going to be impacted, or whatever the case may be. You're now tying all of that. By the way, oh, we've got change and incident now that we can utilize to help us as we're going through these, to
Hmm.
spin up those different things that we may need to take action on from an operational standpoint. So
Nice.
I love that example, Chris.
Yeah, definitely. The one that came up recently for me was phones.
Ah,
So corporate mobile devices,
yeah.
which everybody has, and like you said, just because everybody's got infrastructure in the cloud now and they've offloaded that to external vendors, doesn't mean that you still don't have hardware like laptops, devices, keyboards, mice, like all that underlying infrastructure. That accelerated project template to launch it and get everything populated that I need, especially for something that's repeatable, is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
So that's how it connects to CSDM and other products. But what about other areas of the ServiceNow platform? How does SPM connect to those?
So I'll stick on that ITSM example.
Sure.
When you're going through a project and things like that, I think this is probably one of the least known interactions. Especially, I talk about it with people, and they're like, I didn't even know we could do that. It's creating a change, like a change request from a project. And I'm not talking about a project change request where something scope or budget or timeline is changing. It's actually something that is needed within our organization of the change management processes, right? You can create a change directly from a project. If I'm going through and I was like, oh my gosh, something needs to happen for our, operations that requires a change. That is a huge tie-in, right? When you think about the areas that we kind of talked about of deploying apps and things like that from a product standpoint, but also IRM, right? I've worked, and this is not necessarily, like an capability deployed, but it's a concept to be able to leverage. When I'm going through an IRM, or we'll just say compliance exercise, I need to uh, make sure that I'm doing the right things, excuse me, for what is the scope that I need to cover with these compliance areas? What are the things that I need to do? What better way to have a project template, or, lighter, you go CWM with a templated board that has all the things I need to do, all the people I need to touch for getting them compliant, or making awareness, or doing all of that stuff. Any part of your organization could be doing training. Any part of your organization could be doing organizational change management. We talk about OCM a lot from a ServiceNow perspective, but every area of your business needs to go through change. So OCM, holy buckets. If I'm doing anything on the ServiceNow platform, I need to make sure that I'm going through a repeatable process for organizational change. If I'm doing anything in my organization that's touching ServiceNow, well, what better way than just have an OCM plan, repeatable template, those types of things.
Right.
SAM as well. I would say SAM deployment, when we're
Right.
thinking about it from a, I'm approaching my launch of software asset management. Try and do 35, 50, 150 publishers all at once. It's just, how can you do that in a consumable
Right.
rate, right? So have a plan. We're going to start with Microsoft, and we're going to work through all of the entitlements and licensing and all the SAM processes within Microsoft. I've got a repeatable project now because
Right.
I'm going into Oracle or Google. If you're using Google, I just replaced the name of my Microsoft with the Google. That's my project. But guess what? All of the onboarding of entitlements and ensuring that we have proper reclamation and all of those types of things. It's just making your work easier and better and transparent.
Right. Okay.
If
So
you wanted to
how?
talk
Oh no,
about
keep
more
going.
about like the interaction between apps, I you asked some questions on that too, but I wasn't
No,
sure.
I think you covered that, and the change request directly from the project record was a great example, and it's not the only example. I mean, you need to go out and check that documentation and look at these different capabilities and repeatedly check, because in 6 months that list will be much longer, and then in 12 months longer then. So the self education part of the product is always going to help you deliver the most value. And there's many times I've gone through the documentation and went, oh my God, I've been fighting and doing this, manually for 8 months. When did this feature come out? And it's like, Tokyo. Okay,
Yep.
that's fine. At least I found it now.
Right.
Okay. How could SPM help with yearly audits or compliance checks?
That's that IRM kind of
Yeah.
tie-in, or you think about financial organizations or things like that, right? Um, it's hard not to go right back to that repeatability, right? If I know what they're going to be expecting, if I know what their these audits are going to contain or be it, guess what that's going to do? That's going to impact the people that need to be involved in those audits. So if I'm doing resourcing, I put those in those certain time frames of yearly audits or whatever, as say operational plans. Because if I'm fully allocating my folks to projects and now we have to do an audit, we have timelines just exploding, right? Because we didn't plan for that. So make sure resource management is accounting for those types of yearly things or quarterly things that you do in your organization, so that you're using that data to prepare for prioritization, timelines, and impact. The other thing that I kind of think about is so in financials, there's always this: if I can give the auditors what they're looking for up front and I'm prepared, that's going to make my audit process typically a little bit easier, right? Because now it's not, I don't have this, now I have to go find it and then I'm bringing it to them. If I'm already prepared for it 3 months in advance, because we're just doing it, with our day to
Mhm.
day, and we're, rather than it just being a big event, again, now I'm planning for it and I'm doing those repetitive organizational things at the time that it needs to happen. And there's always the surprise audits and
Yeah.
we need, we have something that happens like a breach or security event or something like that. But again, if I'm not devising the plan when it needs to be executed, it's even better, because, oh, guess what? We know that we had to pull in these 5 people because we've got historical data now.
Right. So, and that's a great point. So, would you recommend for audit compliance checks where it's coming every 3, 6, 12 months? After you complete one, do you just use the template and kick another project off so you can start that planning on, what would we consider day one of the next compliance check?
Yeah, I think that really speaks to a kind of a retro or a lessons learned as well, right? Because part of a repeatable process is getting better. It's not just, you say it, insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you're not evolving the process in which you're executing those things, and we're just, well, this is the template, and 3 years from now, it hasn't changed. What good is that? It just, I'm doing the same things over and over again, but I'm experiencing the same difficulties. However, I'm not
Mhm.
talking about it. I'm not looking back on how we can improve it. So I think even before you spin that next one up, is figure out what was good, what could be better and what needs to go away, right? What's that stuff that
Right.
is just a waste of time? And then you can also look at how can I automate some of this stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah. I love identifying automation candidates. So running those workshops and identifying that stuff really does drive a meaningful backlog. And it's not just fielding requests. Anybody can just take them, right, and put them into the backlog. But
Yeah.
driving a meaningful backlog helps drive more meaningful results for you. Okay, so how can ISPM help with operational management of services or products that have already been deployed?
So this is actually something I've talked about with a lot of customers is the concept of an operational project, right? Everybody thinks, well, I'm not doing a work breakdown structure and all of those types of things. Well, you could just use a project for your operational because what is contained within operational? It's people and it's usually money, right? So if I'm showing funding or financial planning and financial actuals and return and stuff like that um, for my operational projects, who's to say that I need to do operational assignments? I can still do regular resource assignments for those operational projects, right? Again, if we're doing, kind of repeatable type of activities and stuff like that, that's not, I mean, operational is more in the moment, right? But now I've got a place, one thing that we can leverage within the new project works or newer, I had to kind of stop saying new because it's not new anymore, but the newer project workspace, maybe new to you, right?
New to me.
Is
Yeah.
docs. And so you can actually create templates of docs. And it's, so you don't have to have Word docs or a repository and SharePoint and things like that. I can do docs within projects. So if there's operational things, or maybe I have a weekly meeting or whatever cadence of meetings, you have your
Mhm.
meeting template doc, you have your whatever you're doing for work instructions, right? You can have those there. Now I'm actually working all in one spot, even though it's operational.
Right. So that, I mean, you kind of glossed over a huge thing there for me anyway. So you're saying that SPM with this approach could replace SharePoint and consolidate files, shared files, as well as things like meeting notes from Copilot and
I
things
would
along that line?
I always hesitate to say replace because
Okay.
obviously SharePoint, it it has its uses. It's a
Yes.
great document management, versioning, and all of those types of things. But for the things that we are sharing between the same operational teams that
Hmm.
don't necessarily need to be shared outside, or I don't want to have to link out to another one.
Right.
Within project, there's docs. Within collaborative work management, there's docs, and all of these can be, um, uh, uh, templates can be created. There's a lot of other areas that are using those docs as well.
Hmm.
EAP or enterprise agile planning.
Right.
Um, there's now like retro, like a retrospective, or those agile type ceremony that needs documentation.
Hmm.
I wouldn't say you replace SharePoint if there is good use for it. Like we share things
Right.
between teams and stuff like that. I wouldn't use Docs, right? But for
Okay.
this project or for the things that I'm doing, 100%.
So some use case based replacements, yes. Perhaps not total bye bye SharePoint subscription for the whole company. We're doing it all here, right? 'Cause
Right.
let's remember that ServiceNow was never designed to be a document repository, nor would you want to do that because
Yeah.
that's think of your
For
database
the whole
size.
solution, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Right. But, if we had repeatable, say, Scrum meetings, like you said, sprint planning meetings and retrospective, you could use it as a single use case as replacing and not sharing it in SharePoint, but you attach it to a meeting task within the project. Is that
So it's
an
actually a
accurate?
little, so within Project Workspace, there's the left kind of, it used to be whatever, used to
Mhm.
be the related lists, and there still are related lists, but there's modules within Project Workspace. One of them is Docs, and Docs is your Docs repository for that project. So you don't have to attach anything because it's all living right there.
Okay, that's very cool. Okay, well, I think we're about 5 minutes out
Sure.
from the hour. Sometimes these things go by fast, and actually, for every single one of them so far, it has. So, thank you so much for spending some time with us and answering some of the questions. We really appreciate everybody tuning in live and those of you watching afterwards. Are there any other things that you'd like to share? Maybe a fun anecdote or something from an SPM project without naming
Um,
names?
I have one. It was pretty interesting. But before I do that, one more plug for the SPM Hub in community and all the app hubs
Mhm.
within community, particularly for my area. Those quick start guides, that is your anchor point. And if you subscribe to them, we post comments when we add content or change anything or whatever the case may be. You want to talk about informing change and things like that. I would say that's probably your biggest source of that. Yeah, I've done a lot of implementations, and one went for, well, we started with HR actually at this
Okay.
organization and doing IT for HR, or I'm sorry, project management for HR, and that was their pilot group, and then we went into the IT organization, which was much larger, and we then implemented there. Um, HR was leveraging it as good as you could. The engagement for IT lasted quite a while, and it was not like, oh my gosh, I'm still here. Like, I
Yeah.
loved working with this group, and they were excited about it. The What we were doing was really transforming their business. And then I checked in a couple years later, and it was like shelfware. There was so much put into it, and they loved it so much.
Yeah.
But guess what they didn't do? Socialize it. They never,
Yep.
even
Hmm.
though we did so much training with them and we created content for them to use for training the other individuals, they never took that next step. So implementing something, the greatest implementation in the world, if it's not being used and you don't have the mechanism to actually communicate and get adoption, you don't have that
Hmm.
top down kind of, this is what we're going to do and this is why. Why is always
Yep.
important. It could be that same scenario. Oh, that never got off the ground.
Mhm.
I was
Right.
shocked.
Oh, that's that's sometimes disheartening, but other times you really, like you said, have to use that OCM piece. I'm working with a client now. They are very heavy on the OCM, and they are seeing the results of that.
Yeah.
Right now, during the middle of the project, we are actually operationalizing a bunch of the actions and making them do it, having them run the demos. And this isn't so that we can offload the work, but it's so that we can guide them and then watch them do it and answer their real-time questions. And some of the questions that they come up with, I never would have thought we would need to answer. So it's been very enlightening on our side for that, and just very grateful that they saw the value in the OCM investment, and it is significant in terms of relativity to the project budget. And I hope that they see the value too.
It's awesome.
Okay, well, that's all we had today, but thanks again to Josh from ServiceNow for sharing some time with us. We're going to check out collaborative work management. Go to the SPM product page for a list of current features and some of the benefits that you'll get out of it. The community link for SPM. We'll post all these into the video description. So, Josh, I'll ask you to email me the correct links so that I've got them from you directly. And we are August 1st, 2025. So thank you again for joining us. Today's a Friday, and I hope that the only thing better than your Friday is your Saturday.
Thanks for having me,
Okay.
Chris.
All
Really
right. Thanks
appreciate
a
it.
lot. Pleasure,
Bye.
Josh.